Yeah.
So everybody, just kind of set the stage for today. We say this every single time we have a webinar, but when we say we want this one to be interactive, we really do. We have a very special guest with us today, Mikey Taylor, legendary skateboarder turned entrepreneur, turned real estate investor, turned brand marketer. I mean, he's everything these days, traveling, jet setting the country, spreading the gospel. And we're so lucky to have him. I know we might have a little bit of a split between those who joined us from Watermark and have joined us before, and some, maybe we just might have some fans of Mikey as well. So anyone who has a question, we want this really to not to just be a Q&A, but like a Q&A. Everybody start firing them at us at any time. Really the goal here is to come out with a few key takeaways. I think that the most important takeaway is how to really build your brand and build yourself kind of along with it, and provide value and be a resource to the world, which I think is probably Mikey's top principle in business. The second key takeaway is, marketing is really not just how you spread yourself online or social media or anything. It's how you talk about yourself. It's how you talk about your business. It's how, more importantly, your friends and family and the people around you talk about you and your business, because the people around you are your best referral source. And I think the third key takeaway is really how to find preferred partnerships and how to find key people who align with your value system. Because again, selling life insurance case by case to client by client takes a long time, but having clients sell for you in a way and friends and family sell for you in a way, I think is really where you find value in this profession. So it looks like people are still kind of crawling in. Nicole, we can start this whenever you want, and you're going to start this off with a poll, right?
Yeah, I'll get started with launching the poll right now. You guys, if you just want to take like a minute or two and answer these 3 simple questions, I'll allow like 2 or 3 minutes for it.
And as you guys are looking at those, we just want to take the time just to thank you again for joining this. We're having really great feedback coming back from our agents and just the community around us about wanting to learn and wanting to kind of soak up, the information that we're trying to provide. And that really means the world to us. We are only as good as our agents, right? That's the game that we play. And so when you guys are out there kind of spreading the message that we're hopefully sharing with you, I think that's really all we can ask for. And one other thing is down below in the chat function, I don't know how familiar with Zoom everyone is, but we're going to be peppering questions throughout there, maybe posting articles. If you have a question and would prefer to share it through there rather than jumping on camera, I would love for you to be on camera so I can point you out and we can match the name to the face and the voice. But of course, you guys can chat away as well. Nicole,
Great.
Those poll questions coming in?
Yep, I just closed it. If you want to review them, go for it.
It's not popping up for me. Can you grab that up?
There you are.
All right. Those numbers surprised me a little bit. Mikey, I thought you were going to be a little more popular.
Oh, dude, dang.
But you know what? That's good. I'm glad that people are going to get a chance to learn about a little bit about you and understand your journey.
Considering it's only 10:05, watch all the people who know me come in around 20 after. That's skate time. Skate time.
Skater fashion, yes.
If anything, that says a lot about Watermark. Do you do any personal branding? This one I'm happy about. 43% yes, 57% no. The goal by the end of this conversation is to have 100% yes and 0% no. The third thing, do you have experience building preferred partnerships? 61% yes, 39% no. Again, a pretty good mix. That means that you do understand the principle of it, but some of you aren't quite doing it yet. And again, that's what we're going to hope to get out of this. Nicole, are we ready to kind of kick this off?
Yeah, let's do it.
So before we start with Mikey, I'm just going to give everyone a little background about me. I actually have a 20-year career prior to my life insurance business as a sports writer. And, every so often I've been lucky enough to interview people who have not just made an impact in the field of sports, but in the field of business. And I think with Mikey, really in the field of life. And I think that's the big takeaway today is, how Mikey has learned to kind of just provide value and be a resource in life, and not just business, not just sports, not just, everything he does. It's truly an honor to have you, Mikey. We're gonna do our best to have this be as little sports as possible and a little bit more focused on the business, but I do want to start off with a sports question. Mikey, we'll get to the question I already asked you in a second. When did you step on a skateboard for the first time, and when did you fall in love with it?
Oh gosh, I stepped on one for the first time. I was about 12 years old. I fell in love with it pretty quick, but that was kind of typical for me. I would love everything I did, just the love wouldn't last long. Skateboarding was the one where it just didn't go away. That was what was unique to skating.
So how quickly did you become the Mikey Taylor who had a shoe named after him, or that you designed even?
So that was I was 23, so about 11 years later, which was fast, relatively fast in skateboarding. I got a late start, but I'm more of an obsessive personality. When I do things, I do it all day, every day. So I think I was just able to catch up just on more output than everyone else.
Okay. So it was a long journey. I would never have expected 11 years from start to that, crescendo. Tell me a little bit about how you kind of approached it as a business early in your career, because, obviously at 12, you didn't have your own shoe or a sponsorship, but when did that come along, and when did that light bulb click for you?
Well, there was a point in which it became a business, but I didn't view it as a business at that time. Like for me, my parents told me I had to go to school and had to go to college, and I didn't want to go to college. And the only way that I could not do that was to get companies to pay me. So I just didn't have an option. If I wanted to keep skateboarding and not go to college, I had to get, somebody to give me money. Once that happened, I became technically a pro skateboarder, but all I viewed it as, I get to skateboard and they get to pay me. It took me probably, I'd say 5 years after I became pro until once I started viewing my career as an actual career. Like, looking at it more as looking at myself as a business, as opposed to me just being the kid skateboarder making money. That didn't come right away. That one took some time.
So, before this conversation started, one of the questions I asked you was, skateboarding especially is one of those sports where it's a very individual sport, right? People at a very young age are given these sponsorship deals and kind of thrust into the limelight. And I think you're able to see the success stories, but also kind of the failures, right? Can you tell me when you started realizing that there would have to be a path ahead, that you'd have to not just look, a week or two down the road?
Yeah. So to kind of give everyone context, when I was about to graduate high school, the message that was told to me, which I completely believed, was if you don't go to college, you cannot be successful. Like I was all on board with that. And when I told my parents that I wanted to be a pro skateboarder and that I wasn't going to go to college, they freaked out. It was full panic mode. So I think because my parents were scared of me doing this, because I believe that if I didn't go to college, I wasn't going to make, the amount of money that I envisioned myself making, that I was sacrificing a lot by doing this. And so when I started making a little bit of money, I think all of that fear built in that my life wasn't going to be anything because of the path I chose made me really focus on how do I maximize this moment so that maybe life isn't as bad as I think it's going to be. But I did not think that I could build something that would be bigger than my skate career. I thought the second half of my life and career was only going to be a small component of what I was going to do as a skateboarder, but I still wanted it to be not as bad as what the fear element I built up to be was.
That's interesting. That's something I've encountered, for 2 decades as a sports writer is finding these athletes who define themselves so much by their first act that they're almost overwhelmed to even have a second or third or beyond. But let's kind of transition into that. Your second act was a relatively brief one, but a fruitful one, and I'm sure a delicious one. Mikey, you opened a brewery along with how many other, was it 3 total founders?
Yeah, with 3 of us total. And then we had a bunch of investors, but 2 of my best friends are who did this with me.
So take us through that story. And you founded a brewery. What year was that? About 2013, is that right?
Okay, so we opened doors 2012. We came up with the idea maybe the beginning of 2011. It took us a little over a year to figure out what the heck we were doing. But basically, my wife, I gotta take a step back actually. I asked my now father-in-law permission to marry my wife, his daughter. And the first thing he said to me is, what the heck are you gonna do after skateboarding?
Ooh.
Right? He was so concerned about how I was going to support his daughter because I was living a career that was so short-lived, right?
Yeah.
And so that conversation led to my wife going, so like, just out of curiosity, like, what are you going to do after skateboarding, right? And she said something that was actually really profound. And I didn't realize the significance of it till years down the road. But she said, look, you don't have to figure it out right this second, but I want you to at least put in the back of your mind. Like if an opportunity presents itself, I just want that thought to be somewhere in this that you're thinking about life after skateboarding. And I think she knew how obsessive I was and that it wasn't going to be in the back of my mind. It was going to be right front and center.
Yeah.
And so after that conversation, everything that was maybe an opportunity, I grabbed onto it. Like, for example, I had a backpack sponsor and that backpack sponsor let go of their skate program. Okay. And I was with another skater who was on that team and he looked at me, he's like, dude, we've got to get a new backpack sponsor. And I looked at him like, no, we don't. We need to start a company. Let's start a backpack company. It was like, everything was so like, let's just start companies.
Yeah.
And so maybe a week after that, I got a call from a friend of mine who wanted to start a sunglass company. He ended up starting, it was called Glassy. But when he was pitching me on the idea, like, you should do this with me, I just so happened to be with one of my friends who would later become my partner in St. Archer. And when I hung up the phone with the pro skateboarder who was pitching me the idea on the sunglasses, I looked at my friend. I was like, what do you think about this? Like, what do you think if I do a sunglass company? Because I'm thinking about starting companies now because of my wife, right? And he looks at me and goes, dude, it's cool. But like, have you noticed that everyone in our sport does the same things? We do clothing brands, skateboard brands, apparel, sunglass brands. It's always the same category. And he was like, it would be rad if we did something that has never been done in our world. Like holy crap, they did it. And that conversation 4 hours later led to him going, like, beer. Like, what if we did beer? And I was like, are you kidding me? We have to do beer. Okay? So that night, we were actually on a trip together. We left the trip the next morning and he was like, hey, call your friend Paul, who was another pro skateboarder who like was known for investing in brands. Okay. He's like, call your friend Paul, we're going to need an investor. I'm like, all right, cool. So we met him at Starbucks off Canaan the next morning, pitched him the idea from the night before. And he was like, let's do this. Oh, and God. That was the beginning of us having to figure out what it meant to start a craft brewery.
I love that. I love that. And Mikey, one of the things that's fascinating, particularly about your stories, is kind of like you said, people who've already built a brand unto themselves as an athlete really find, it difficult to kind of branch away from that. But with St. Archer and then, now with Commune Capital, you have really kind of sort of said, like, I'm past that part of my life. What was the conscious decision there to really become, trying to kind of cut your teeth in the business world and sort of forge your path beyond Mikey Taylor, the skateboarder?
That one took time, actually. It actually happened after St. Archer. When we did St. Archer, I still viewed my identity as a pro skateboarder. And I was still skating professionally. When I did St. Archer, I had to figure out how to do a hybrid role because I didn't want to abandon my career because, one, it was paying me, and two, I had so many people following me that I figured it was an asset to then start business with. And also the other component is skateboarders don't really like business. They don't think it's cool. They don't like money. They don't like success. Skateboarding's it's raw, right? And so I was always really worried about what the people in my community were going to think. So I always tried to play this like behind the scenes kind of approach where I'm a pro skateboarder promoting this business, but I never really talked about the business side of St. Archer. I was just trying to be a marketing machine for it.
Yeah.
when St. Archer sold and it became public that, you know, we did it, I was terrified by that, actually. I was so scared because I felt like I wasn't going to be able to kind of maintain this double life or this secret life. And everybody was going to know that, like, yeah, Mikey is like a businessman. He thinks about money, talks, right? And I was scared of that moment. The first contest I ever skated post the sale of St. Archer, that's how they announced me. Mikey Taylor just sold St. Archer, made this many, you know, talking about the amount of money I made. It was just like, my heart sunk. It was like, this is not what I wanted to happen, right?
That's not a good intro, yeah.
I didn't go through the full transition of skateboarding was then, and this is now, until my skate career officially ended.
So I think all of that kind of leads us to this point where, you know, you are cat's out of the bag. You are a financial influencer now, if you want to call you that. I hate that word, but we're going to use it.
Yeah.
You have really learned how to brand yourself and sort of find a voice and find an audience. And, you know, I think that's something that our agents and just everyone on this call can really learn from. The idea of being confident and sort of putting yourself out there. And you know, you've told me before, like, when this started happening, you get some kind of sideways looks from those other skaters, like, who does this guy think he is now, right? Like, you know, oh, Mike, yo, it's Mikey again, right? How did you shake that off? And I think that's agents who are watching this right now. One thing to learn is you can either kind of be meek about what you do and sort of sell insurance in the shadows and be quiet about it, or you can look at yourself as having expertise that is helping protect people, save people money, invest in their future, create tax-free income. I mean, it's all in the pitch. And Mikey, your pitch has been pretty, you know, out there and in your face. Tell me about that.
Okay, so I'm going to answer that two ways. And the first answer, you're all going to see that the secret to my success was marrying a really smart woman. But my wife,
That's true. So true. I can vouch for that.
Basically, my wife, during my career, halfway through, she looked at me and she was like, "Why don't you show your personality more? Like, why is it all about skateboarding for you and you don't let anybody into yourself, who's typically, you know, I'm kind of all over the place, I'm engaging, I'm goofy, whatever." And she was like, "Show that." And I remember having this conversation with her saying, like, no, that's not accepted in skateboarding. The trick has to drive the attention. Anything other than that dilutes the craft, right? That was like what I was on. And she was like, seriously, I would really consider putting your personality in there. Walk them through the journey, walk them through the trial, show them you messing up, because when you're failing and you're falling, it's actually the most entertaining thing to watch of you. Sure. I'm like, okay, shit. So she had that conversation with me. The next week, I go to this big skate camp in Woodward in Pennsylvania, and I'm there with two new, like, up and coming pros. I had been pro 9 years at this point, right? And we get to the camp, it's probably 2,000 kids there. There were 4 people that knew who I was. Every single kid at the camp knew them too. It was so humbling for me, right? Mm-hmm. And so I left that week, I came home and I was like, holy crap, my career is probably towards the end of it, right? And I just kept hearing what my wife was saying, bring them into you, bring them into the journey, walk them through the trial. And so that next month I came up with this idea to create this kind of webisode. This was before social media, where I was gonna film these bi-weekly hour-long videos of what it's like behind the scenes of a pro skateboarder. Me going to meet my friends, me trying to film a trick with filmers, photographers, me failing, being funny, etc. The next year, I go back to that same skate camp. All 2,000 kids knew who I was. My career went bonkers. I started selling more product. I started making more money. Everything had changed once I brought them in. And that was a big turning point for me, to realize that the product doesn't sell to the consumer. They have to grab onto something else. And when I understood that, that was actually the biggest confidence builder, me moving forward, because I realized that if I could apply that in other areas, I was going to be fine. And so when we went into beer, we didn't sell a product. That is not what we were doing there. We were selling an experience. We were selling something that when somebody drank our beer, they were thinking about the culture that we were marketing to them, right? Totally different. And so that that all came from my wife. I wouldn't have had that experience without her.
Can we bring her in on the call?
I know, seriously. I know.
It sounds like you should be interviewing her, to be honest with you.
Seriously.
Yeah, Mikey, can you talk about like the commercials you shared with John and I earlier, about how you sold the experience? Like, just give an example, for instance, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so basically, to give you a little bit more context, with skateboarding, all the companies use the same wood manufacturer. It's all the same board. We just put different graphics on them, and then we sell a different, I guess, call it vibe. And kids think that one skateboard is better than the other. They're identical. Behind the paint, they're identical, right? So we got really good at marketing being pro skateboarders. So when we went into craft beer, the biggest opportunity that we saw is that everybody was selling a product. That was it. It was product first. So, you look at like Stone or Ballast Point, any of these guys, they were doing some unique, some infused fruit or some specialty hops. It was something about the product, and that was the focal point to make a transaction or to sell it. We went, no, that's not what we're doing. We're going to create documentaries, mini documentaries on the person, right? We're going to take surfers, skaters, snowboarders, artists, musicians. We're going to do a 5-minute piece on them, and we're not going to talk about beer at all. But at the end, it's going to say video done by St. Archer, right? So our whole thing was selling this like California lifestyle through our lens, through the alternative sport lens. And other craft breweries thought we were crazy. They didn't understand it. I remember the message boards for the first year of us being in business. It was like, these guys aren't even selling beer. What is wrong with them? This is so gimmicky. And then we started blowing up. And then you started seeing the other breweries try to create these documentaries like this. It was like, they were like, oh my God, we got to jump on this wave. And it was, we just understood something that they weren't up on at that point.
Yeah. The whole concept of, are you selling a product or are you selling an experience? I don't know if we in the life insurance industry necessarily look at what we do as an experience, but every relationship that we have is an experience. Every way that you take care of someone is an experience for them. Customer service is an experience for them. And so the way you sell a product versus experience is really interesting. We have a business coach who some of you may be familiar with, Talia Jacqueline. She was on one of our webinars, I think it was in April, and she had this incredible conversation with me that you can really only sell to two different parts of someone's emotion or where they're buying from, right? And it's really, you can either sell to someone's aspirations and their goals and their emotions and their heart, or you can sell to their logic and to, solving a problem for them, or in a way, product versus, again, the experience that you set. And again, as life insurance agents, I think sometimes we forget it is not only is it more important than the product, but our clients don't know what the difference is, right? They're buying from you because they like you, because they have a relationship with you, because they value you, because they think you're intelligent, and above all, because they trust you, right? And so, Mike, I want to talk a little bit about building trust and some tips that you have in that regard, because it's very easy in today's world to put content out there and pretend like you know what you're talking about, and advice in the guise of sales or advice in the guise of trying to build popularity, right? And you don't know how to suss out what is real or not. Mikey, when we sat down and really talked a lot about this, you said one of the things that's most important to you is being a resource and providing a value. When did you decide to just sort of, if you want to call it, take the long approach, if you want to say not come off salesy? I think that's probably your biggest strength. How did that form, or how did that come to you?
Okay, so when I was coming up with the idea of the second company I was going to start after St. Archer, it was in the investing world. We do real estate funds. So people invest with us, put dollars into real estate investments, right? Very, very different than what I did with St. Archer, but there was one similarity. There was no brand experience. They were, even with real estate, right? All they tell you is a metric. What's my preferred return? What's my total IRR? What's my risk? That drives the, call it investment or sale. that was similar to St. Archer. So I did see an opportunity where I could apply that same model we did in the industry that wasn't using it in real estate. So that was, I guess, my how to turn red ocean into blue. The difference was how I was selling it was going to change. And this was really why. There's two ways that you can gain attention, through entertainment or through a value add, adding value, right? I didn't see a way to only do experience or entertainment in real estate. Two, I saw a need with financial literacy. I think that was probably the biggest driving factor. Was all of my friends, when they're done being pro skateboarders, they call a sponsor and ask for a job in the warehouse. There is no education when it comes to skateboarding.
Yeah.
So I just saw that there was a need there. There was an opportunity to blend it with building a brand in real estate, and just took the approach of, I guess I'm going to shift and be more of a value add person. I'm just going to like try and think of the consumer instead of myself.
Yeah.
That was a big shift. I mean, dude, as a pro skateboarder, it was all about me, right? I'm going to put out this piece to make people think I'm good. It was so like self-driven.
Yeah.
The big shift was like remove myself and put content out there for the viewer. And the cool thing about that was it made it so much easier to see criticism. That was the big shift for me. When I was a pro skateboarder, dude, dealing with people saying I suck and all that was tough. Now it's not even a problem.
That's funny. That's funny, because I think we do always have that kind of devil and angel on our shoulder. Like, should I put this out there? Am I going to come off looking dumb? Am I going to, am I coming on too strong? Am I being too annoying? I heard a good principle at some point, which is if you're not bothering some of the people, you're not doing it right. Like, someone's got to be a little annoyed with how often you shout out to them or whatever. Nicole, I want to bring you into this real quick. Out of everyone I know in the life insurance industry, you're one of the proudest people I know who is very, loves that what you do matters, right? I think you're a champion of life insurance and in this industry in general. Can you talk about sort of being a champion for insurance and spreading the knowledge and value that you have in a very organic way? Because I think, we're going to talk a little bit about preferred partnerships and just placing yourself in among people with value, whether that's wealthy or not. And, you're someone who I feel just really gets that. When did that kind of light bulb click that life insurance is something that you should be proud to share and that you should be happy to extol the virtues of it and the knowledge that you have?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Thank you. So growing up as a child, my parents always shamed me for being the most social kid in the class, always talking and getting in trouble for it and whatnot. So I've always had this very social aspect to me, or characteristics, so to say. So that's definitely carried on into my work life, and where I just love to meet people and learn about what they're doing and see what difference they're making in the world and those types of things. It opens up an opportunity as I get to meet them, how I get to share what I get to do for people with them. So always love to educate people where I can. I don't pride myself on being an educator, but in the instances when I'm being, and like in my groove and I'm, socializing or at an event and meeting new people. And I love the synergy of business. So I love taking someone like Mikey, for instance, and introducing him to an investor or whatnot. Those types of things make me so happy. So, and if I can educate people along the way, and if life insurance may be a fit in that conversation, then great. I love nothing more than just to make new friends, new acquaintances, teach people about what I do and see if it can help them. And then also how may insurance in general fit in with what they do and whatnot. And then also introducing those people to other people, because at the end of the day, it's really just all about, doing business, but having fun while you're doing it, and making sure that we're taking care of our customers as well. So it's more of an organic thing for me. It's not something, when I enter in a room, it's not like, hey, I'm gonna go sell insurance. Like that's never my intention. It's just let's make some new acquaintances, let's make some new friends, and find out what they do, and if there's a fit, then great.
Yeah, I think one of the key things, Nicole, that I've taken from you in the 18 months I've been with Watermark is just the idea of keeping life insurance kind of top of mind or front of mind. And you know, whether you're in a particular quote unquote sales opportunity moment or not, at all times you can present yourself as a resource to someone. And so real quick, guys, before I move on with any other questions, if you guys have any questions at any point, again, you know, raise your hand, flag us down, or in the chat function, don't hesitate to ask as well. Mikey, kind of staying along that vein, because I think one of the things that we talked about is, you know, when you talk about being a resource for people, you know, it can come off, you know, very inauthentic, and it can come off in a way that's, you know, come to me if you ever need me. And then there's almost kind of like anticipating what someone will need, or almost just knowing them well enough to like feel comfortable with a suggestion or an idea or something. Now you're involved with Commune Capital, Mikey, and you're dealing with people of, you know, wealth and success in all different ways. How do you tone it down at times? How do you not sort of be like, every moment of every day you could connect with someone who can invest with you? Like, to me, it would almost be hard not to just be firing off like, hey, here's an idea. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's actually such a good question. I do good when I basically kind of map out the purpose of each week. And so kind of how I structure, I would say there's two things to it. I structure what I'm going to do on content wise or digitally, and then what I'm doing in real life. They're actually two different methods. So as far as the digital basically path, all I'm focusing on is education. How do we create content that is meant to add value? That's all. Then we have our sales material. I'm going to create these type of videos to drive sales. So those are always working with one another, but our brand build, which is not the sales component, is probably 80% of the push. Sales is probably 20.
Interesting.
Then in real life, my whole entire thing, and it's very similar to Nicole, just want to build relationships. I just want to meet people, get to know them, build, you know, trust in them. And kind of what I found is if I'm focusing on making a sale, I'm not going to get the sale that much. If I'm focusing on creating the relationship, I end up getting way more sales down the line, because naturally when you get to know somebody, you want to know what they're doing. And then when you get to not only know somebody, but you enjoy them, you want to do business with them. I think that's probably the biggest change with what I do now is when you start dealing with really, really wealthy people, they have every opportunity in front of them. They only want to do business with people they like. So if you just focus on building the relationship, the transaction follows. It just might not follow very quickly, but when you start doing this a lot, everything starts compounding, and maybe a relationship that you built 3 years ago can catch up to one that you built 2 years ago, and it ends up, you just start making sales along the way. Does that make sense?
I totally agree with that, Mikey. Yeah, I feel the same.
But, you know, I almost look at it kind of like a horse race, right? Where, you know, they all take off at the exact same time, but they're not going to end up at the destination at the exact same time, right? And so you may be planting a seed with someone, and, you know, that seed may have grown to a you know, small little tree with another person, and then you might be bearing the fruit from another tree, and it all cycles, right? And so if you keep just planting seeds, they're going to harvest at different times. And, you know, Mikey, you said something that is kind of really resonates with me, which is 80% building your brand, 20% selling. I think a lot of our agents on this call are going to feel like, I don't have the time for that. I need to be selling just to keep the lights on. I need to be selling and forget the brand part. And I also think, look, you know, you are very, very, not just tech savvy, but tech forward and kind of bold in your, you know, going on TikTok before that was cool, you know, whatever. To someone who is, you know, maybe not as tech forward, maybe not as comfortable being in front of the camera, maybe someone who doesn't necessarily want to, you know, build themselves up as that kind of, you know, media personality, how can you still provide value even if you're not necessarily going to that level with it?
That's a really good point. So there's a couple things there. If you're not comfortable being in camera, start putting yourself in front of the camera, right? We gain confidence by doing.
True.
And the beauty is, if you're just getting started, you don't have a lot of followers. What's really going to happen,
Bad ones.
right? So I would say get started as one. Two, don't get overwhelmed by having to do all the things. Commit to something that you can be consistent at. If that means, you know what, I'm going to post one time a week on Instagram because I know that I'll be able to consistently do that. Start there. Start wherever you can. If you feel like you can start doing more than that, then great. But it really comes down to what you want to build. If you want to build something bigger, if you want to compete at a different level, it means you're going to have to do more, right? And people, honestly, people connect with people. It's really hard to sell something when you have nothing in that's face forward. So the way that I look at it, and this has been really helpful, take social media out of it, right? Think about all the ways that you could go build relationships. You go to live events, you call people asking to be connected. Once you meet them, you have to follow up on email every so once in a while, you have to call them, right? All of that takes time, but the purpose is just to build trust, right? Well, what social media does is you can meet somebody one time and then have your social media build the trust forever, however long. And then you're able to do this at such a larger scale because you're building content that takes the same amount of time, whether it's meant for one person versus a million people. It just goes out there. So if you want to build, I think this is the thing you have to do. But something that you talked about was, the amount of time it takes to build something long-term, right? Like when you're sales oriented, and I get it. Look, this is a struggle for all of us, right? It feels good closing. It's rewarding. We make money. It's almost an addicting feeling, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to delay gratification and stretch it out, but this is the case in everything, right? When it comes to investing, you get paid 2 times, now or later. Later, you're going to make more. This is the same exact theory. If you can extend the timeline and have more of a long-term vision, it's going to be a slower build, but you're going to have a bigger vehicle down the road. So shifting away from this, how do I capture it now, to how do I build something larger in the future? You won't even be able to stack them against one another. The long-term vision is gonna tenfold the short term.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's so important about that is that doesn't mean to forego opportunities in the present. It just means make sure that while you are working on opportunities in the present, the bigger goal at hand is just the relationship. And, Nicole and I were talking with a younger agent the other day who hasn't really been in life insurance, that much, trying to get more involved with it. And one of the things that we were really trying to convey is the idea of, look, life insurance is the kind of thing that if you do this right, you can help provide them protection when they're 26 years old, when they're 32 years old and they buy their first house, when they're 38 years old and now they have 2 kids that they're trying to protect, when they're 45 years old and they're trying to build a college fund. You have touch points with these people at different parts of their lives. And if you always keep, their needs and where they're at in mind, there's going to be sales that follow. Yeah. One thing I want to get back to is the idea of sort of building a brand without necessarily being in front of the camera. Because as much, Mikey, as you said, yes, definitely, just if you're ready, willing, and able, sort of jump without a parachute and dive in, you're going to have 2 followers, and who cares if you look stupid. There's another tack that you can take as well, which is just put it this way. If you post relevant topics to people, and if you are someone who is, even if you're not in front of the camera, sharing, updates from the industry. Della, I'm going to pick on you if you can turn on your microphone. We talk about this often with Della. She is like a LinkedIn star, right? She is, when she sees something that's interesting, the very first thing that goes in her mind is, I want other people to know this too. Della, how did you get your start kind of deciding, like, I want to just start providing to other people things that I find interesting because you do it so well?
Thank you, John. Well, basically, I'm a very passionate person. So if something excites me, I think everybody should be just as excited. So I went to an event in Atlanta, Georgia 6 years ago, and there was a coach. He was fantastic. He juggled like on a unicycle. He dirt bike rides with his unicycle. Just fascinating guy, relatable to business on so many levels. It's called Lean In on Purpose. And Dan Thurman is his name. So every time, it's just like from his content every week is such an important message about roadblocks we hit in our careers or personal life. Very relatable family guy and very successful entrepreneur. And I just find things like that all the time. Like John posted an article with the Lakers owner, forgive me, Joni Buss, right? Yes. And I just was like, I need that. I want to share that. First of all, I was excited for John. I thought it was important. I loved the personal aspect of what he shared and what she had shared with him intimately about stand-up comedy. And that was her kind of unique niche. And I never knew that about her. So I find people to be really interesting, how they got there, their journeys. And so I just like to share that kind of stuff.
You said something there, Della. Thank you so much for touching base. You said something there really kind of interesting to me. You're just passionate about it, right? And I don't know if everyone on this phone call is gets up in the morning and has a shot of espresso and then reads the insurance trades, right? Like you don't have to be that. In fact, life insurance doesn't have to be your whole life. It could just be insurance, right? But a level of enthusiasm about the way the business is moving, the people within the business, you should have a modicum of that. And you should, want to know where the tea leaves are going. So Della, thank you so much for sharing. Eric Averill with Athletes Wealth Management had a wonderful post there in the chat. I don't know if everyone sees it.
Hey, John, I'm going to cut you off real quick because I think there's something really valuable about just what happened. The point you just made, which I think is huge, you can put content out there and not be face forward, right? You can do email drip sending articles, you can do LinkedIn, Clubhouses, audio based, etc., right? But what I will say is when Della was speaking the whole time, I was listening. You have such a good way of being captivating that if it were me, I would tell you to start adding that on to all the things you're sending, right? You could always show an article and then give commentary to how it resonated with you. This is why I love this. And if you are struggling with being the authority, there's a way to kind of have the authority figure just by saying how it reached you and putting the emphasis on somebody else. Mm-hmm. But I love that. Anyway, let's move on to John.
Mikey, thank you. That's such an incredibly valuable point, which is I think we have to get over our fear of not wanting to look dumb, thinking that we know everything, right? I think, Mikey, that's something that you encountered from especially other skateboarders who are like, who is this guy and why does he think he can talk to me about this stuff?
Yeah.
And, eventually by doing it long enough and by being right, you don't have to be right 100% of the time, but if your intentions are in the right place and you're providing that value, you're going to get a response. Eric, do you want to hop on and ask that question real quick?
Yeah, Mikey, first, thank you for spending the time with us this morning. It's been super valuable. One of the main question I had was, during your career, obviously everybody knows who you are, which also means there's a lot of people that want to be involved in your life. And what was your process to go through who you were choosing to listen to about business, about money? And I'm sure it evolved once you got older and wiser and probably been through some experiences, but I'd love to just hear how you went about that process and maybe how it's different than what you would tell an athlete today.
Yeah, it's a great question. So there was a component of it where I lucked out. My parents had somebody who helped them with their finance. And they were like, we've been with this guy for, I can't remember how long was this point. We trust him. We want you to go listen to him. Now, I lucked out where he was financially free. He built business. He wasn't just selling an advisory service. It was so much more than that, that I really lucked out there. Two, he just had this belief, and I think why it kind of transferred over to me is he spent so much time with his clients, educating them and trying to empower them so that they could do everything he was currently doing. So like, for example, most advisors, especially in the athlete world, athletes don't pay attention at all. They just blindly give money over. That person manages everything, and there's no synergy with one another. For me, every quarter I would go in and he would be teaching me new disciplines. This is why we pay yourself first. This is the importance of it. Then once that's out, we're going to create, your asset allocation. And then when things change, this is why we diversify. Now this is investing in yourself. All these things he spent teaching me, he did not need to do. This was all on top of the fee I was paying him, right? That was huge for me. And then when it got into business, when we started St. Archer, we didn't know how to start a business. We had to raise money for that. We didn't know how to raise money. But I had such a good relationship with, his name was Randy, with Randy, that I called him and I was like, hey, dude, I need to set up a meeting with you. I'm bringing in my 2 friends. We need help, right? Because all he had done to me in the past was educate and empower. So we were like, dude, we want to do this company. And he was like, okay, where's your business plan? We were like, what? I didn't know what a business plan was. He spent time helping us build our business plan. When we figured out we had to raise money, he spent time educating us on how to go out and pitch, the questions investors were going to ask, how we had to respond in a way that built trust, where somebody was going to give 2 skaters and a surf filmmaker their money to start a business they had no experience in prior, right? He didn't have to do any of that stuff. He just did it. And because of that, I will be friends and partners with him forever, right? Everything he did was creating a long-term relationship. And then now, knowing what I know, I have a little bit more to stand on when I'm trying to tell other people how to find something like a financial advisor, right? This is what some do. This is what others do. You want to make sure that you have somebody that understands your career, especially for talking about athletes. You want to have somebody who's very transparent about their fee structure. You want to know why they're making the decisions they're making. If somebody's not going to spend time building you up, through my experience, I think you should find somebody who is willing to do that. And that brings us all the way back to the first conversation. How do you add value beyond the product? Now, this is in wealth advisory. This is in private equity. This is in insurance. This is in all of it. How do you retain a client forever? The product will not do that. Never will.
Yeah.
So through my experience, that was achieved by somebody spending time building me up, caring about me, et cetera. So I think that's why I spend so much time on the value add side. How can I add value to our investors that is not part of the return? It's just part of the experience for being with us. You know?
Thank you.
That's a really good question.
Yeah,
Eric.
that was great. Thank you.
Eric, thank you for your time there. And I can post a link to our conversation with Eric a few months ago. He joined us for a webinar as well. And I think, Eric, you might be a good person to ask this question to, as well as Mikey. Preferred partnerships and just really finding a way to find like-minded people. Eric, you know this better than anyone, a former professional baseball player yourself. You can talk to an athlete until you're blue in the face, but talking to an agent is going to be a lot more fruitful for you, right? Talking to the people around the athlete is where the money is. And Mikey, and in your case, you're talking to these investors who you might get the blow off from them and they say, well, just talk to my guy. How do you turn that conversation into a relationship? How when someone gives you, a good lead in to their guy or to their protector, how do you crack that nut? Because, getting one deal with one athlete is nothing. Getting 1,000 deals with 1,000 athletes because of one agent is the whole business.
Yeah, it's such a good question. Think about kind of the athlete in a whole. They're always being pitched, right? They have every opportunity given their way. So what we talked about earlier, brand building versus sales, you really, really have to play the long play, in my perspective, when dealing with somebody like an athlete, right? Now, when you add the manager or the agent into this role, yes, and a lot of times they're the gatekeeper, but they're also the one that's even more protective in a lot of cases. So what I found is like the balance that I'm always trying to play. How do I make the agent or the manager feel like I am not threatening? And then I'm not just trying to get through to him to get to the athlete, but how do I still build the relationship with both of them at the same time? It is not easy. I'll tell you right now, there's a challenge to it. The approach I take, typically I connect with the athlete first. There's more that we are going to resonate with because I was a pro athlete, and I'll typically connect with them on social media. Once I build the relationship with them, then I'll ask, hey dude, do you have this is before I even pitch them. Hey, so who do you use as an agent, as a manager? I'd love to connect with them. Just like, the more people I can know in your space, the better. Now I have the athlete connecting me with the agent, and I haven't even pitched him on anything. Then the agent's like, yo, whatever. Why, dude, I used to be a pro skateboarder. I connected with him. I just like seeing our, sports progress. And I work with a lot of athletes, just seeing, making sure they can keep doing big things. Oh, what do you do? Well, I was a pro skateboarder. And I rarely go into what I do now. I'll just say, oh, I used to be a pro skateboarder. Let them ask, give them a little drip, but I really try to hold back on the sale part. And then what ends up happening, I swear every time, hey, so can we hear more about this? Yeah. Every time. Hey, dude, tell us more about the investment stuff. Hey, yeah, we'll circle back on that. I'm trying to be opposite of what everybody else is coming at them.
Yeah. Eric, do you have any thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, that resonates. And I have a colleague on this call, Zach Miller, played 8 years in the NFL and was a Pro Bowler and won a Super Bowl. So he's shaking his head yes on every point there. I think what we do is actually a demonstration of what you guys are doing for us right now. Is in our world, one of our investment companies that we trust in the public market side is Dimensional Fund Advisors, right? DFA. We say our job is to be DFA to the agents or to our venture partners. So when we're up in the Bay Area with Excel or Andreessen Horowitz or whoever it is, we understand they don't need our money and everybody wants access, right? Same thing with the athlete. So it's three things when it comes to most people, especially on the agent manager side. They have three things that they're concerned about. How do I get clients? How do I keep clients? And then how do I have personal success? So we ask the question, as a wholesaler mentality, how do we help them get clients, retain clients, and have personal success? So it's those three things: education, building. I mean, I couldn't agree more with Mikey. So it's super helpful. Yeah.
One thing I'm going to add to that for both Zach and Eric, I went to an event last week in San Francisco. If you guys, were you guys in, anybody play football?
I was there.
Zach, I was there at the same event you were at.
Zach. Okay, yeah. So Ryan Neese runs a company now called Next Play Capital, right? Came from football. He does these events every year, San Francisco, invites football players out, invites pro athletes, and then invites fund managers, invents, somebody in marketing. This time they had a tax strategist there, and he's trying to basically, in my perspective, do two things: bridge the gap, add value to all the people that he's bringing there to see a part of investing that they don't typically see. And then for the people that, Eric was kind of referring to, the Horowitz or some of these big players, what value do they have? Well, now they're in front of an audience that they're typically not going to be in front of, and Ryan bridged the gap. There is so much value that Ryan is adding on every area and himself. So there's a cool way to build that trust on all kind of fronts. And all it does is connecting. Back to Nicole's point. If you know how to connect people, you're going to do well. It's that simple.
Yeah, Mikey, I was trying to track you down at the event, but it was so fast that I couldn't get in front of you. So
we'll have to connect. We'll have to connect after this.
No, but it's super helpful to hear you talk about, just because the transition, like so many people, they get done playing a sport or whatever, and I don't know what you're expected to do, just right off into the sunset. But it's like, I mean, you got a whole other career ahead of you if you want it as a player that's been there, done that. So it's very helpful to hear you talk about how you transition and how you lead when you're talking to guys. Because I mean, I've played with plenty of guys, And I talk to them now, they're like, I know they're getting terrible financial management, but they're just like so afraid to fire their current advisor or even just like hear a second opinion. And it's like,
Yeah.
man, let me just drop some knowledge on you. I won't sell you anything. Let me just help you out.
Yeah, Eric, Zach, let's all three connect after this. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that we could talk about as far as, you know, things that I'm doing that's working on my end and failing, and I'd love to hear on your end too. Maybe all three of us could step our game up, you know, collectively because of this.
Yeah, definitely.
Listen, if Watermark Life can facilitate, no.
Yeah.
You know, I want to say something because, you know, I'm sensitive to one thing that I think is important, and, you know, not to discount, you know, Mikey, Eric, and Zach, three former professional athletes on this phone call. Thank you for your abundance of time. But, you know, not all of us are in the the professional athlete space, right? And I don't want you to think that we're just talking about that space here. I think the big takeaway from this more than anything is whether you're talking to your nephew, whether you're talking to your nephew's boss, whether you're talking to the guy down the street who happens to be, you know, a professional, whoever it is, you know, at all times, just kind of put yourself in a position to be a resource to them, right? And, you know, Mikey said something that I think is so important. And it's the idea of, you know, how do you do a sale when you're really not doing a sale? Or how can you focus on something? I'll give you an example. You know, one of my best friends, mid-30s guy, he has happened to have a lot of success with Apple stock, kind of out of nowhere. And we're just having a casual conversation, and turns out the guy has turned 200 grand into $1.2 million of Apple stock. And he's kind of like, all right, now what do I do now? Like he's in a bit of a panic mode. Do I just cash out, right? And so I let him tell me that. And in the back of my head, I had the premium financing as an insurance strategy, you know, as something that might be available to him and not to everyone, right? That is a strategy that, you know, only a select few can take advantage of. But if you're in that select few, you really should know about it. And I didn't make a sale. I didn't say, I need to sell you this product. I said, I need to talk to my guy, Tim, who's on our call, Tim Whitmore, who's our premium finance guru. I think we might have an idea, or I think there might be a solution to some of the anxiety that you have around this. I didn't say we need to talk tomorrow. I basically said, like, next time we talk, I'm going to come better informed, right? And so Tim and I sat down. I gave him my buddy's kind of specifics. Tim said, yeah, you do this, this, and this. It's kind of a no-brainer for him in this position. Next time I saw my friend, it wasn't a full court press. The first thing out of my mouth wasn't, hey, guess what? I talked to Tim. Tim said you can do this. No, 2.5 hours. Look, does it help that the guy I'm talking about, I've known him since 3rd grade? Yes. But by the time I brought it up, it was almost, oh yeah, you know, I just remembered this was something that we talked about the other day. It was non-confrontational. It was non-aggressive. It was, again, more than anything, hey, do you know about this? Because if you don't, even if I'm not the one who sells it to you, you probably should buy it.
Yeah.
And that's how I wanted it to come off with him. That's how I want all of your conversations to come off, which is, look, buy this life insurance policy from me or buy it from someone else. Doesn't matter. Get yourself protected.
Yeah.
I tend to believe that if that's your approach, you're gonna get something in the long run from that.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, because this is getting a little late, but you know, this is very valuable. We haven't had anyone drop off the call the entire time, so I'm glad we kept your attention. Does anyone have any specific questions from the life insurance agent side? Anything that you want to ask Mikey, because he's such this valuable resource? If not, I'll say this. The next step should be pretty simple. If you think that you want to start building a brand, if you think that you want to start letting the people around you know a little bit more about you and what you do, reach out to me at Watermark Life. It's just john@watermarklife.com, Jon. I'll toss it in the chat function. We have already begun working with some of the agents actually on this phone call. And so it's good to see some of these familiar faces, really just helping them with marketing materials, with social media approach, all that. That's our role at Watermark Life, is really to help you facilitate those kind of sales. We don't just want to be the back office there. David Baldwin, you had a question.
Yeah, actually, I was just curious. I know that since you're a family guy now and a business guy now, do you still have time to actually skate, and do you enjoy it like you used
Great question.
Good question. That's a good question.
I have a good story on that one. Talk about cute sushi.
Yeah, no, the answer is no. So, gosh, where do I start with this? The hardest part for me personally, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to resonate with this. I'm obsessive, very obsessive. And it's very hard for me to balance this energy when it comes to family, friends, anything outside of what I'm doing. So what I've had to learn how to do was schedule time with the family where it's all for the family, schedule time for the business, and then if I have a hobby, I'll get to do the hobby. Skateboarding it's on the back burner right now. It's, you know, business, starting a business is, I mean, as anybody here knows, it's brutal. It's 24/7. It's exhausting. It's amazing. It's a lot like parenthood. But no, skateboarding is it's not there right now. And then the other part of it too is like, and I'm sure Zach and Eric can relate to this one. When you do something at the highest level, you're used to performing at that point. And then when you're not able to do it there, there's a moment where it hasn't made its way back to where it once was as a kid, where it's just fun, right? Like my mind knows how to do tricks, but if I'm not skating 6 hours a day every day, I'm not doing those tricks. So when I go skate right now, it's not that fun, you know? So I'm hoping it comes back though. Like my daughter is just now starting to ask to skateboard and she's having me take her to the park. That is awesome. So it might be the kids that get me back into it.
That's right.
That's what it takes. We have one last question here. Scott, you want to hop on? Actually, two. Scott, you want to jump on, Scott Sage?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys at Watermark again for putting this on. And Mikey, wonderful hearing your story and your commitment to just helping people be educated and building the relationship. I just wanted to say that I was in Watermark's office a week or so ago, and John sat me down and showed me some of the marketing things that they're doing in the branding. And you know, sometimes you think you got a handle on everything and you think you know everything and you're kind of closed off about opening up that kimono and looking at new things. And John shared with me some marketing things. He branded them for me. There's never a push to sell or anything like that. And I just really appreciate that. And I think you do a great job over there. So I want to acknowledge that.
Well, you're going to make me blush, Scott. Thank you. I will say this, that's great to hear, but on the same time, there are a handful of agents on this phone call whose names I've seen before, who I haven't heard from. Let's change that. Let's really try and form that collaborative unit, that team effort to kind of go out and really help change your business and help change your sales. But Scott, thank you so much for saying that. That's very kind.
I think Jeremy has a question. Yeah.
I'm pretty much on the same page. You know, I just wanted to, it's funny that, Mike, a lot of the things you were saying as far as marketing, these are some of my struggles. And so it's like building the relationship. It's funny that you say a lot of people are usually more on the sales side of things. But for me, I've always felt like, for me personally, I take it personal if somebody doesn't engage with me when I'm even walking in the store. If you don't greet me, I take that personal. If I walk in, you're on your phone and you're just like, oh, restaurant, like if you don't, I take it kind of personal. So like engaging and building that relationship with people and making people feel like you actually care about them is important to me. So a lot of like this, you validate a lot of the things that I already feel, because sometimes you feel like you're in the wrong place. Like maybe I should be more on the sales side of things, but it's validating to, to see your level of success and to see that you have the same approach. And then also, loosening up and just being yourself with people and letting them see you for who you are. Because we have to in this business, I think we get so caught up on like, okay, we got to secure the bag, in so many words.
Yes.
And so it's like I think we forget to be human at sometimes, we get so caught up in it. You don't forget to interact and show emotion and let people know like, hey, like, how's your day going? It's simple, just doesn't even have to be about policies, insurance or anything. You just, how's your day going today, So just building those relationships. So, but I just wanted to say thank you to everything, to everything that you're doing, and I appreciate the time that you gave us today.
Yeah, Jeremy, I appreciate that, and two, just so you know, as far as securing the bag go, look, that's all of us, right? Like I want to close. I've got to a point where I recognize the urge and have to back myself off. But I think that's very natural for all of us, man. Like, look, it feels good. We want to do it. We make money, etc.
Right.
So you're heading down the right path. I love the keeping people engaged. That's huge, man.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, I'm sorry to, Mikey, cut you off. Jeremy, to me, a perfect case study in this, right? Jeremy's pretty new to this industry. And, you know, I think one of the things that he and I have talked about a handful of times is just like, I mean, I don't think, and I'll say this about myself, I'm new to the industry too. I don't look at myself as, you know, forget an expert. What's
Right.
11 levels down from an expert is about where I peg myself, right? But I am passionate, and I am intrigued by this industry, and I am kind of fascinated in a way by the way things move. And Jeremy, every time we talk, I hear that enthusiasm and kind of just that embrace of this industry. And the one thing I would say to you is, like, at this stage of your career and your development, you shouldn't expect yourself to be an expert. No one else is going to expect you to be an expert. You should just try and look at yourself as someone who wants to provide, whether it's a smile, whether it's information, whether it's, you know, resource value, whatever it is, you know, especially with new agents in a new field. You know, I know we have a couple of young ones on here right now. You know, no one is speaking to mid-20s, you know, young 20s, mid-20s, young 30-year-olds. No one is informing them. No one's educating them. They're coming into the life insurance purchase process. 95% of the time, they're totally blind to it, right? And so if you can even start presenting yourself as someone to turn to answer some of these questions. And honestly, I think one of the things that might be the best tool that any life insurance agent or anyone trying to provide resource is just the tool of humility, okay? It's the best, I will tell you right now, the best people in the world don't have an answer for everything. They just know how to get you that answer, right? I would much rather partner with someone who has resources around them that they can ask to than partner with someone who thinks they know everything and then leads me in the wrong direction. And so, you know, I want this message to go to you, Jeremy, specifically, but everyone who's listening.
Yeah.
Putting yourself out there doesn't mean a 25-minute about me selfie video, blah, blah, blah. It just means, you know what? Tuesday, my goal, I just want to put a post out there that's related to life insurance. Thursday, my goal, I just want to put something out there that's related to life insurance. Then eventually, you know, a month down the line, I want to give my take on what I just was posting. And then eventually you don't post anything except your take, which I think is the evolution that Mikey had. And I think it's a good one. We're getting a little bit up here in time.
I think we have one last one with Ryan starts.
Yep. One last question to someone I believe is a big Mikey Taylor fan. So we're gonna.
I am. Yeah. Well, yes. So I appreciate your time today, Mikey. I have been in the insurance industry since '99, but I am a fan of skateboarding. And the all-encompassing takeaway that I got from all of this that you said earlier was selling the experience. And I love that quote. I wrote it down. I highlighted it. And it's so true. And you referenced it in relationship to St. Archer, and you're absolutely right on that. And I shot you a note earlier. I was that guy. I mean, for craft beer, for me was Carl Strauss or, Ballast Point. I'm not a fisherman. And, but when you guys created that, I don't even care what the beer tasted like. That, it was like you, who I've been following since, Alien Workshop and DBS and 411. Mikey likes it.
A real fan.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, but you had, you had Taylor Knox. I'm a surfer too, and I think P-Rod might have been part of that. But again, didn't really care about the beer. This was the experience that I wanted. And not only was it the beer, I bought every hat, shirt, sweatshirt, and it became a bigger deal than just the beer. And it's true. That's on the experience, and I think that can resonate into even our, in everything from, John, as you said, it just is, you look at like Adela, use that as an example, the way she's passionate, that's an experience you have with her. And so I just think just all encompassing, it was a great quote, and I think it was great. And I really appreciate it. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Also something, and Zach's going to know this because he was at this event last week, but something they said at the event, which I think will resonate with everybody and what we all do, that a lot of times we're on defense when it comes to clients, investors for sure. Investor relations is something that, like, you forget how important it is, but you typically wait until there's a problem then put out the fire, right?
Yeah.
They had they had a speaker at this event, and they were talking about the importance of being forward on the experience. Don't let investors or clients come to you with concerns. Be proactive and get to them first. Make sure that, they have like an experience gauge. Make sure that your experience metric or whatever is high, because the higher it is, the longer retention you have. That was a good thing for me to hear, especially on the investor relations side. That's one that it's just easy to neglect.
Yeah. Guys, again, we can't thank you enough for your time. I'm going to ask Mikey for one last question, just because I'm curious about this, and we had such a good talk about this. If you guys want to hop off. We're going to post the recording on YouTube as well, and we're going to be sharing this on YouTube. Probably give it to Mikey, and he might share a little bit of it as well. Mikey, you talked, when we sat down, you talked about this like getaway, this like ridiculous extreme sport. It sounded like the greatest weekend of all time. And, something that you said during that conversation kind of really resonated with me. And it's the idea of like providing a good experience for someone. It doesn't end at the event, right? Like you want to send people off sailing, right? You want them by at the end of it to bug you to come back to the next one. Can you talk a little bit about the idea of like, it's not just about providing the experience for someone in a customer relation or a client relations way. It's also about the follow through and the follow up, and just like it's more than just the hour that you're with someone, the week that you're with someone, or whatever. It has to be a longer vision.
Yes, and where the challenge lies. So what I started noticing was, especially post skateboarding, I started getting invited to all these events. I get invited to these dinners. I get invited to these, Next Play Capitals. But every once in a while, I'd get invited to one, and I couldn't stop talking about it. For months, I would be talking about it. I went to this event in Montana in February. I was telling John and Nicole about it 2 weeks ago. I'm still talking about it, right? And so I'll tell you real quick about this event. Somebody invited me to Montana to go on this snowmobile trip. And it's all kind of CEOs or kind of like high level or high producing people. It doesn't have to be it. This is just the niche he created. He invites 15 people out there, and you snowboard all day on Friday, you snowmobile Saturday, and you snowmobile Sunday. The genius behind it is they have a Patricia Award. And whoever the weakest link of the weekend is doesn't get to come back. So if you're a new invite and you get the Patricia Award, that's your one and only trip. If you're a vet and you invited the new guy, you go dark the next week. And what it did was put this psycho amount of competitiveness, all these type A personalities, and you're like, you don't want to lose so bad that you're doing reckless stuff. Now, there's a component that's dangerous, but like it was out of this world, right? I was buzzing for the next 2 months. And since then, dude, he's scheduled, hey man, just reaching out. Hope everything's well. Let's keep in touch. Would love to get coffee with you. Hey, dude, Montana's coming up again. Anybody you want to invite? And kind of, I guess the big takeaway is this. He created an experience that I'll never forget. And I'll tell that story, which I'm only giving you guys a glimpse. I could go into this thing in detail. It was amazing. 2, the follow-up game is where the magic happens if you want to continue the relationship, right?
Yeah.
Hey, just checking in. I'm in town. Let's go get coffee. Hey, how's everything? Hey, here's a card, etc. Go beyond the email drip. Actually make a touch point to connect. And then I look forward now to the next event. I want to bring somebody to experience what I experienced. And now for him who started the trip, he now has access of all these new people to build relationships with who had a phenomenal experience that they're never going to forget. They're going to want to do business with him moving forward. So that's something that we're actually working on now is how do you put together a live event or an experience trip that is so raw and so sick that like everyone there is going to talk about it for the whole year, tell their friends about it, etc. But yeah, the power's in the follow-up. We all know this, man. Like you're selling insurance, you're raising capital. The pitch is the easy part. The freaking follow-up game that's where the challenge lies.
Well, I'm gonna leave you with this one note. We had him on earlier. Unfortunately, he had to leave. It's an agent, Michael Altman, who's one of Nicole's long-term agents, and they have a personal close relationship for a long time. And he came in and we met together, the three of us, a couple weeks ago. And in the course of a conversation, apparently I said something that made his ears stick up, and it kind of only reinforced everything that we're saying today. And Mikey just said it right now. And Michael kind of stopped dead in his tracks, and he basically said, like, John, I don't hear this very often, but you just said the 6 magic words in sales, and Mikey said it too. And it's something that this better be a part of your practice going forward, because this is the most valuable thing you can say to a customer or a client. It's very simple. I was just thinking about you. Okay, simple as that. I was just thinking about you. And oh, this, and it doesn't have to be about a product. It doesn't have to be about a case. I was just thinking about you. How's your kid doing? I was just thinking about you. You know, I know you have this thing coming up, blah, 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 whatever it is. If you can embody that, if you call that the follow-up game, if you call that anything other than just being a good dude or woman, that's all it is. Caring about the people around you, caring about your clients like they matter. It's really not a crazy complex, a crazy concept. Mikey, again, hour and 15 minutes is a record long for these, but it was fun, and we can't thank you enough. Everyone who joined, we're so happy to have you. Shoot us an email. If we can connect you with Mikey, we're glad to do that. Mikey's made himself available to you guys for any kind of conversations or follow-ups. Reach out to us, and we can get you connected to him directly. Zach, I know you guys are going to connect. Ryan, we got to get you some signed merch.
I'll be making a connection as well.
Yeah, Jeremy. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, most
So
definitely.
again, guys, thank you so much. Nicole, as usual.
Thank you.
Mikey, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. This is amazing. So